But what I'm saying is, so these are the assumptions. Are they true assumptions? There's no validation behind that. Just because you smoke doesn't mean that you're not going to be a hard worker. It doesn't mean that you're not going to go above and beyond. However, there may be that public perception because you smoke that people unrealistically have false assumptions about you. And so that's why we want to come together to learn how to break down those type of lines of division. Okay, what about educational background? Because you have an education, a college degree, people think what? Thank you for sharing.
Stereotype would be that you might be smarter.
Mm-hmm. And how would that translate over into the workplace environment?
That if you have a group of folks that do have a degree in your team and those that don't, maybe the ones that don't aren't, their ideas aren't accepted or recognized as much.
Right. Or they may be intimidated by you as well, right?
But I found that to not always be the case. There's some really wise folks that don't actually have a degree.
Absolutely, I agree with you. Anyone else want to share the college degree thing? Because you have a college degree, people think what?
I came at it from just the opposite angle. As the youngest of 10 children in my family, not a first-generation college graduate, but a first-generation high school graduate, I would say entitled, you don't work as hard, you're a know-it-all, you're physically weak because you're not out there doing some kind of labor-oriented job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. I agree with you there. Like I said, my wife is one of 13 children. She's Hispanic, and her brothers and sisters, her brothers give me a hard time because they all have worked with hands all of their lives. And so they look at me and they think what I'm doing is not real work, right? They say stuff like, well, he doesn't know how to do it, but he could put a suit on and tell you how to do it. Huh? But, I remember coming up, when I had aspirations of going to college, some of the friends I knew thought I was a sellout or something was wrong with trying to improve myself. And so those are just some of the perceptions. You're laughing over there. Anyone else? What if you have a college degree, people think what? Did I have a hand over here? Huh? Did I have a hand?
I would just agree because whenever people, in growing up, friends that I grew up with, they say, you're just acting white because you want to get good grades.
I'm not going to say that, but you did.
I mean, that's what you hear.
Yeah. She's right. So if you didn't hear that, you're Hispanic, assuming maybe?
Yes.
Yeah, so she's saying because she wanted to improve herself, people from her culture were saying, oh, you're trying to act white. That same thing happened with my culture also. You try to improve yourself. When I was coming up, they would say the same thing. Oh, you think you white or something like that? So these are the type of things we deal, like I said, within our own culture because you have or are aspiring for college or higher education. One more college degree one. Okay.
That you're more determined and you're more disciplined.
Okay. And so how does that transfer over into the workplace?
Well, like me personally, I could just like from my mom, she never got educated. I don't know a woman that's more determined and goal-oriented than she is. So you could misjudge somebody's character.
Mm-hmm. But in the workplace, because of the things you're talking about, there's probably a higher expectation because you do have a degree.
Right.
Okay, and you're perceived to be more determined.
Right.
Okay, all right. And let's look at the last one. People from rural areas. This ought to be a good one, huh? People from GNC, good and country places. Anybody have something like that? Let me pass this back. Could you pass that back to her? Thank you.
You're considered more conservative. So when you're talking about working together in groups, people from other groups are afraid to bring up something that may be different for them, so you don't have open communication.
Okay, so if you're from a rural area, you're considered more conservative, and as a result, on the workplace, people are probably more apt not to bring up ideas because you might shut them down because of conservatism. Okay, that's a perception. Anyone else on rural areas, people from the country? All right.
just an assumption that they're slow. They may not be educated. It's like, well, they're just SH-T kickers, you know, and they didn't do anything else.
Yeah, so you're bringing both sides. So perception is because they're from a rural area. You said a mouthful then. You got So the perception is because you come from a slow area, you could be slow. That's not the truth. But how does that transfer over into the workplace if people believe that about you?
That they will, if they're slow out there, they're going to be slow here in the workplace. We can't count on them to pick up the speed or to understand what needs to be done.
Yeah. And that's so unfair, isn't it? Okay, because they could be, like you said, kickers. Okay, one more on the rural area. Anyone from the country? All right, I got two over here, so. Okay.
That there's simpler people than people that are more urban, and more urban have more complicated lives, therefore they can think more in depth. But since they're simpler, they're more narrow-minded.
Okay.
So on the job, since they're not as sophisticated, because they haven't been exposed to as much as us urban people, that means they probably shouldn't be in a leadership position.
Ooh, that hurts. Yeah. Okay. All right, we'll grab one more up here. All right, perception of people from rural areas?
They understand the meaning of hard work and the values associated with this characteristics, and they appreciate the little things. Impact on the team, they're usually pretty down to earth, likely to go the extra mile to complete a task. They're usually pretty trustworthy.
Okay, so I like that. So what he's bringing in is a positive assumption. Big a round of applause for all the answers in here. I appreciate your transparency. It's not easy to answer those particular questions, but I appreciate that because really you unveiled some things in here I've heard for the first time. But we've heard both negative assumptions and we've heard positive assumptions. And we've heard how those assumptions can be carried over into the workplace and how it can affect a team, even to the point where, you know, the young lady back there is so offended at smoking, you might not get hired. So, I mean, that's the real world stuff that we're dealing with out there. And so we need to learn how to deal with these assumptions, understand our own blind spots to be able to move forward.